So let's talk for a bit about Xenoblade Developer Monolithsoft. But before we talk about the new update, I want to briefly touch on how Monolithsoft has released games in their history. And that's going to be pretty important. They've been pretty consistent over the years with their release schedule. To take a little snippet of that, that is 2015, they released Xenoblade Chronicles X. 2015 also Project X Zone 2. Then there was a break in 2016. Then 2017, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. 2018, Torna, the Golden Country. 2019, there was another break. 2020, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. 2021, another break. Then 2022, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. 2023, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. In 2024, it seems like a break. This schedule would probably suggest that this is the year that their break is going to be. That's not a break in, them working, because obviously they're probably working very hard on whatever the next title is going to be. But this year we should probably not expect anything in terms of releases. Next year, maybe we would expect something to release, because that's kind of been their schedule and they've been very consistent. But now that we know what their schedule is kind of like, the fun part, I think, is trying to think about what that next released might be. And here's the update that we've been given. Monolithsoft is now hiring for a new game from director Tetsuya Takahashi, the man behind Xenoblade. And that's an executive director position he is taking on this new project. And that's consistent with the position that he's held in the past on other games in the Xenoblade series. There are open positions, and those positions are a 2D artwork staff designer, 3D CG character designer, 3D CG map designer, development environment engineer, field level engineer, assistant director, in-game animator, and an effects designer. So those are all different kinds of positions. And in the statement, he did say that they are hiring for all sorts of different positions. They aren't just necessarily looking at these, but these are probably like key positions that they definitely want to fill. So they're basically just expanding. They're expanding in a way that I think is good. He also talked about how they've been running the company with too few people for a very long time compared with other counterparts in the game development scene. And this is them trying to remedy that. This is them trying to expand and become something a bit more. And specifically in this statement, he also talks about open world games. So I would take that to mean that this is pretty much confirmed to be an open world game, which wouldn't be a surprise. Not only have they made Xenoblade games, which are pretty open, not necessarily completely open, they're like region-based, but also open. They've also been involved in the development of a lot of different Zelda games, including Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which are very much open world games. So that kind of makes me think, have they been working? I don't know their specific development on the Zelda series, but it makes me think maybe they've looked at that and been like, you know what? We could do that. We could do something like that and turn it into an RPG. So the next game could be a lot more open. So we have an open world RPG, a little different than what they've done before in some sort of significant way, which is something he's stated. Something that they feel that they need to expand the studio for. That wouldn't necessarily make me think that this is going to be just another Xenoblade game. As much as I love the Xenoblade series, it seems like a decent point for them to start trying something new, maybe move in a different direction. Not necessarily too different, though. They've proven over the years that they're capable of creating new IP and doing all sorts of new things with those IP. And in addition, there is this tweet from 2017, which is something that we kind of have to think about, because it sounds pretty similar to what they're doing right now. The tweet says, "A new project has started. We're looking for experienced action game developers. This is an ambitious project that is different from Monolithsoft's brand image. If you want to take on a new challenge in a new environment or use your talents in a new title, please apply." So that kind of faded into the mists. As if you've been following Monolithsoft at all, that action game didn't necessarily come to fruition. They've been doing Xenoblade games, they've been helping out with Zelda, they haven't made the action game. So maybe this new thing is going to be them going back to those ideas. Maybe they came up with some ideas already, maybe they have some development tools created, and they just never got around to it. So it could be a thing. And honestly, there are so many different directions that they could go, but what I personally would like to see is something along the lines of Xenoblade Chronicles X. I've said before in other videos that Xenoblade X is, probably the black sheep of the series, but it has so much to it that's great. They're just the way that it is so open, so many different areas that are very different, that are just really interesting to go through. The way you did exploration, the way that you did some of the character interactions, it didn't focus so much on characters or story or anything like that. It focused more on gameplay. I think some people will really appreciate that. I personally do prefer sticking to story, but I think you can do both, and that's why I like the Dark Souls series, because they do both in a really interesting way with the lore of the game and then having it be, very tied to gameplay at the same time. So they could lean even more into a lot of those aspects that are in Xenoblade X. Could be sci-fi, it could be fantasy. I wouldn't mind seeing them go in any direction with it, to be honest, but I would love to see them do something more open and free, with a lot of different interesting places to explore. I think that is something that they could definitely do. They've already proven it pretty much with all of their games. And I think the end of Xenoblade 3 was pretty clearly the end of a trilogy. Everything had been building up to that moment. They ended it in a way that was clearly an ending. Whether or not it was an ending that was perfectly satisfying to everyone, I don't really know. I haven't seen too many complaints about it, to be honest. Not what I would have preferred for an ending, but it is what it is. They could begin a new chapter in the Xenoblade series. It could be a new vision for the series, maybe something familiar with some significant changes. I find it pretty unlikely that they'll go back to anything before Xenoblade, like Xenosaga, for example, or anything like that. Although, to be honest, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I didn't play through Xenosaga, and I've heard good things about the story. So if they expanded more on the gameplay side of things and kind of stuck to that a bit more, a bit less of the massive, long cutscenes, expanded the scope of the world, that could actually be pretty fun to see. I wouldn't mind seeing them go back to that, but most signs seem to point that it's either a new Xenoblade or a new IP. The wording and Takahashi's message was not perfectly clear, but it makes sense that they would stay in the areas that they've been moving towards over the past, decade or so. The main thing is, it will be an open world RPG of some sort, whether that's more of the region style Xenoblade or something a bit more expensive, remains to be seen. But it will also be taking the studio into new directions, which is what they said now, what they said back in 2017. We'll see how that pans out. So what would you like to see? Would you prefer they continue with more Xenoblade? Do you want to see Xenoblade Chronicles X come to PC, which is what I would want to see? Or, next gen platform, maybe Switch 2. Or would you prefer something entirely new IP? Something like that. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.